Welcome back to day 2 of the Carco.com.au Cup.
On the program today, free formula with Formula Ford, sports sedans, sports cars, WA muscle cars, Formula V, FSR, all here at Carco.com.au Raceway.
Opening up the day with free formula and Formula Ford. The whole field being led out by Arthur Abrahams in his beautiful Rolt RT4 to see the racetrack for the first time.
Big field of free formula here this weekend. It's great to see these cars out on track rather than sitting in a museum.
Due to a stalled car on the starting grid, the race was neutralised partway around the opening lap. Eventually allowing racing to get back underway around Carco.com.au Raceway.
As they head down into turn number 1 for the first time, it's multiple Australian champion in Art Abrahams in that beautiful Rolt RT4.
Great to have Bob Creasy out on the racetrack in the fantastically presented Castrol 26, the Rolt RT1, looking beautiful in the Sunday morning sunlight. At the end of the race for free formula and Formula Ford, Arthur Abrahams taking the win over Jamie Kirchhoff in second, and Harvey Lees bringing the Chevron B19 home in third. The opening race for the sports sedans, sports cars and WA muscle cars to kick off the day. A fantastic mix of various vehicles all racing it out, and interestingly on a rolling start. It was Richard Bloomfield and Ryan Humphrey from the front row of the field as they got away for the opening lap. Humphrey muscling past through the high-powered Falcon to the outside and leaving it all on the line to claim the lead through the first corner. Right with them leading the contingent for the WA muscle cars, Brock Bowley, trying to follow them through and put some pressure on the leaders.
Ryan Humphrey starting to pull away from Richard Bloomfield now, coming under attack from Brock Bowley in the first of the WA muscle cars.
Humphrey continued to put to work with the Falcon, trying to open up a gap, but Bloomfield wasn't done with him yet as they built a gap over Bowley back there in third, and the rest of the field line astern around Carco.com.au Raceway. Bloomfield putting in the hard work. He managed to push the Porsche past Humphrey to get the race lead.
It was short-lived for Richard Bloomfield as Humphrey gained the lead going into turn number 4.
Great to see Troy Wilson getting the job done and getting one up over the top of Brett Nile and Ron Moller.
Side by side over the top of the hill, this great battle between Humphreys and Bloomfield came to a head as they came into turn number 7.
It was for the final time as well as Bloomfield pushed the Porsche to the finish line. Humphrey limping across with a damaged left rear corner of the Falcon, managing to finish the race, but having the pull to the outside of the racetrack immediately after the checkered flag. Taking out line honours in sports sedans was still Ryan Humphrey, sports cars belonging to Richard Bloomfield.
Taking out the win for WA muscle cars was Brock Bowley.
A fantastic and healthy field of 23 Formula Vs took to the racetrack for their opening race of the day. After a bit of a skirmish further back in the field, leading the way was Rod Lisson in the 71 car trying to open up, but the nature of Formula V, some ultra-close racing out front.
Danny Chero making a return to Carco.com.au Raceway, putting in a great performance so far in this race in P2. But Brett Scarey in the 1200cc making an outstanding start right on the tail of car 85 of Mason Legg, who's a 1600.
The front pack of cars absolutely glued together. Danny Chero had the early race lead in the 42 car, dragging about 4 more cars with him as they led out from the 1600 field, but it was short-lived as Rod Lisson continued to pile on the pressure with Franz Esterbauer and David Casely right in the mix as well.
Line astern as they head through turn number 4. It was Rod Lisson up and over the top of the hill from Danny Chero.
like the racetrack cleaned itself up quite well over there.
Fantastic racing still at the pointy end of the field. Listen leads as Chero fought back and challenged for the race lead once again, getting in front at the bottom of the hill down at turn 7 as Esterbauer took hard evasive action to try and grab second. Meanwhile, Casely just watching it unfold in 4th.
Danny Chero still over Rod Listen as they turned into turn number 1. Franz Esterbauer holding fast in 3rd from Dave Casely. Now they're starting to make a break away from the field. Into turn 1 for the 1200cc, it was all Brett Scarey from Callum Lamont, and making a return to the Raceway, Andrew Lockett in the brand new AJ.
The great racing continued out front with the 1600 field. Esterbauer putting on the move to grab second, while Listen still had a strong hold on the race lead as they ran it to the finish. Outright results was Rod Listen taking out the win for the 1600s over David Casely charging home for second and Franz Esterbauer in 3rd.
For the 1200cc category, it was all Brett Scarey from Callum Lamont and Andrew Lockett.
FSR took to the racetrack for their first outing of the day. Elliot Schutz leading the field around from the pole spots alongside young Joel Wheeler on the front row of the grid. It was great to see Stuart Burns stepping out of the F1000 and into a Radical sports car to join the field here.
As they crossed the starting line, it was all Elliot Schutz from Joel Wheeler getting rounded up on the inside by Brad Russell.
Schutz already looking to build a margin over the field as they climbed around and through the S's and up and over the back of the hill for the first lap of 8 for the opening race in FSR. Hard-fought battles already going on throughout the field, but Schutz just immediately looking incredibly strong compared to the rest of the cars on track, even so early in the race.
Top 5 cars starting to make a little bit of a break on the field now as they reel off lap number 2 down towards turn number 1. It was all Elliot Schutz.
Stuart Burns having a good run moving up through the field. He was just knocking on the door of the top 5 early on in the run before a couple of spins up at turn number 4. Joe Burgick spinning at 4. And then at the same time, Stuart Burns spinning as well right at turn 5 and losing control of the 3 car. This brought out the safety car for a handful of laps, neutralising the race while they recovered the 3 car of Stuart Burns.
So at the restart, it was Elliot Schutz from Brad Russell in 2nd position, then young Joel Wheeler on debut in P3.
So great to see so many young drivers stepping up to the plate and going racing in these Radicals. The likes of Joel Wheeler, Cooper Cutts and Brandon Duncombe as the race went back to green flag conditions.
Another time up and over turn number 5, it was Elliot Schutz starting to drive away from Brad Russell, who was coming under attack now from Adam Lyle.
At the drop of the checkered flag, Elliot Schutz taking the win over Bradley Russell home in 2nd and Adam Lyle in 3rd.
Free Formula with Formula Ford next out on the circuit, and it was another great start from Arthur Abrahams over Jamie Kirchhoff.
Kirchhoff pushing hard to try and hold on to 2nd place in the early stages, exiting turn 1 and dragging the field all the way up through the S's, joined by the 4 use how they should be.
Down the hill for the first time, Arthur Abrahams in that beautiful Rolt RT4, leading the way from Jamie Kirchhoff, and we go back into 3rd position with Harvey Lees.
The gaps continued to open up as Abrahams continued to put the legs over the top of Kirchhoff and the rest of the field.
Out of turn number 6, Harvey Lees coming under attack now from Lance Carwadine.
A fantastic showing on the racetrack for Glenn Capel, the Barana 274, the 62 car. And Lance Carwadine in the Jane Brabham BT23 charging through the field and eventually moving past both Capel and Lees to grab 3rd.
multiple state champion of car number 26 of Bob Creasy. At the checkered flag for free formula, P1 goes to Arthur Abrahams from Jamie Kirkhoff and Lance Carwadine.
In Formula Ford, it was David Jackson taking the win, this time over David Bowden. Great to see race 2 out on the racetrack for sports sedans, sports cars and WA muscle cars. Fantastic to see Ryan Humphrey getting the repairs done in the pits after that race 1 incident with Richard Bloomfield. They would line up on the front row right in front of Walter Eppel and Brock Bowley in the WA muscle car entry.
Different format for this category this weekend, with them having 3 races instead of the typical 2 by 15 lap affairs.
This time, Richard Bloomfield trying to get the upper hand through turn 1. Humphrey trying to pull off a repeat from the opening race as he got in front with the Falcon over the top of the Porsche back to second. Already starting to put a gap over Eppel back there in third.
Troy Wilson having a great battle with Brock Bowley there, the first of the WA muscle cars.
As Bloomfield tried to throw one up the inside of Ryan Humphrey. Couldn't quite get the power down on exit. They left turn 7 side by side. Great scraps between the sports sedans and the sports cars at the pointy end of the field.
They exit the bowl. It was Richard Bloomfield in that beautiful 997.2 Porsche from Ryan Humphreys. Then we go back to Troy Wilson having a great run in the first of the WA muscle cars.
He would continue that charge as all eyes were on these two out front after their race 1 skirmish down at the entry to turn 7 as Wilson, look at that, sideways coming off of turn number 7. Really putting the power down in that WA muscle car entry, showing the rest of the field how it's done here in race 2. Brock Bowley somewhat on the back foot here in the second race for the WA muscle car, being displaced by both Troy Wilson and Walter Eppel in the sports car Porsche entry. Bowley falling back to 5th outright on the racetrack for the second race as father Brad Bowley tried to scamper for traction, leaving turn 7, something pretty typical with these WA muscle cars.
Missing was Grant Hill this weekend, but great to see the return of the Castrol V8 supercar with Greg Barr behind the wheel. We head down into turn number 7. It's Chris McKenzie in the fire-breathing RX-7 up the inside of the V8 supercar of Greg Barr.
A great scrap between different cars, typical of this class and what we love to see at carco.com.au Raceway. Brock Bowley continued to try and apply the screws to the back of Walter Eppel's Porsche.
Peter Callow on debut, stays to the left-hand side and allows the leaders to drop down the inside. It was all Richard Bloomfield coming into turn number 7 from Ryan Humphreys in the Chev-powered Falcon. Unfortunate for Greg Barr, I believe he lost an engine up and over the top of turn number 5, and that brought out a safety car which neutralised the race.
The race was due to finish under safety car conditions, with Richard Bloomfield taking out the win for the sports cars, Ryan Humphrey winning the sports sedans category, and Troy Wilson taking out the WA muscle cars. The second race for Formula V's was sure to be an exciting one at the pointy end of the 1600 field. The race lead shared between Rod Lisson, David Casely and Franz Esterbauer at various points across the 10-lap race. There's only one real way to experience Formula V racing, and that's live on board. Sit back and enjoy the action. ultimately it was Rod Lisson coming home with the race win once again from Danny Chero home in second and David Casely in third.
Our 1200cc category went to Brett Scarey from Andrew Lockett over his father, Miles Lockett, in third position. FSR out on the circuit. We're going to take a opening lap with Stewie Burns.
Fantastic perspective on board the Radical race car. Keep a close eye on the wheel work and the amount of muscle that Stuart Burns has to use to wrench this car around carco.com.au Raceway, starting from the rear of the field and having to charge his way through the pack.
So not only having to muscle the car through the corners without power steering, it's also dodging pieces of rubber and debris being thrown up by the car in front. Down 2 gears for the entry into turn number 6, and now the big haul up and over the top of the hill here at carco.com.au Raceway.
You can just see the trailing edge of the wings of the cars directly in front. Close proximity in these Radical race cars as they fight for every position and piece of real estate they can.
Not only a fantastic race car, but a very good training vehicle, as you can put somebody in the passenger seat and be guided around carco.com.au Raceway.
Elliott Shute continued his charge. The same form we saw from him in the earlier race on the day, leading things out as Adam Lyle started to prove some pretty strong pace on the racetrack. Cooper Cutts also having a great result, charging through the field from third on the starting grid. The youngster making his way up to make a big impact inside the top 3 for race 2 of FSR.
Heading down into turn number 7 is all Elliott Shute, but how was this little battle starting to develop back here with Adam Lyle in car number 14 coming under attack?
Cooper Cutts really starting to find some pace in this second race, pouring on the pressure to the back of Adam Lyle. He would ultimately really challenge in the race for second as Stuart Burns continued to fight his way from the rear of the field in the 3 car, but nobody could touch the speed of Elliott Shute out front in the 8 machine. Just dominant display of racing once again in race 2 for FSR.
As they take the checkered flag, it was Elliott Shute from Cooper Cutts over Adam Lyle.
It was a fantastic 6th place result for the debutant Brandon Duncombe. We caught up with him after the race.
Here at Arise Racing with Brandon Duncombe, brand new member to the WA Sporting Car Club. What are you racing up here?
I'm racing a Radical SR3.
And you've just come out of karting. Now, I believe you've moved from up north to make this shift down to Perth. Is that just purely for the Radical racing, or is bigger plans involved?
There's obviously a lot, family wanted to move down, had enough being up north, but it definitely helps with this whole Radical stuff we're doing, with like during the week testing and all that. So, no, it's definitely probably a bit of both really for the racing side and just lifestyle.
How have you found the transition from karts into the Radicals?
Surprisingly very different. Sort of catches you off guard when you've been in the kart and come back to the race car. It's a bit different, but yeah, a lot of fun.
Now, you've done qualifying today. How did you go in that?
Did all right. I got P8. It's just a bit of a learning experience, and I can only move forward from there.
And how'd you go in the first race for the day?
Again, P8. After dropping back to, I think, like 10th or something, I'm not sure. But, yeah, P8 again.
What's your predictions for the season? Stay in P8 or try and make your way up the field?
Definitely try and make my way up the field. But see what happens. Just want to develop. Rise have such a great facility with all their coaching and all that. So goal is just to develop throughout the whole season and get as fast as I can.
Fantastic. Good luck for the rest of the season.
Thanks, mate.
Race number 3 for Free Formula and Formula Ford taken to the racetrack for the final time today. Art Abrahams continuing on his very strong form we've seen so far today with a massive lead heading down into turn number 1.
Big field of free formula cars on the circuit at the moment. as they head their way up through the blind right-hander at turn 5. It was all Arthur Abrahams.
Lance Carwadine with a fantastic start to the race, getting in front of Jamie Kirchhoff before they made their way to the halfway point of the opening lap and trying to charge on that lead. Bob Creasy in that beautiful Castrol Brabham BT1, putting the pressure on a few other cars throughout the field. So many different types and makes of various cars from yesteryear out in free formula.
And of course, 2 Formula Fords out there this weekend as well, having a run with free formula as side-by-side action as they head down into turn number 7.
It was an unfortunate DNF for Arthur Abrahams, which would lead the field to be led by Jamie Kirchhoff taking the win at the checkered flag over Lance Carwadine in second and Harvey Lees in third.
Formula Ford results: in first position went to David Bowden over David Jackson.
Back on track for the third and final time today in an unusual format for the sports sedans, sports cars and WA muscle cars. Once again, we are set for a treat. Ryan Humphrey and Richard Bloomfield on the front row of the grid, and they're joined by the second row, Walter Eppel and the muscle car of Troy Wilson.
Even start down into turn number 1 this time, but it was 57 of Richard Bloomfield from Ryan Humphrey and then Troy Wilson in the first of the West Australian muscle cars.
For the first time today, Bloomfield actually getting in front before they disappeared over the back of the hill with the Porsche, leaving Humphrey back in second and almost looking pressured by the muscle car of Troy Wilson, who was also under fire from Walter Eppel and Brock Foley tucked in behind as they came down into turn 7 for the first time.
Down into turn number 7, Troy Wilson hoiks the right front and drifts right out to the ripple strip, right out the front of McCracken House.
Bloomfield had a great advantage over Humphrey in this early stage of the race as they tried to gap out over the field. Eppel showing a nose to the inside of Wilson there, capitalising on the straight line speed and braking performance that the Porsche has. But a mistake from Bloomfield saw Humphrey able to get past and absolutely gap out by about the midway point through the race of the 8-lap race for the sports sedan, sports cars and WA muscle cars race number 3, as Wilson still stayed under pure hellfire from Walter Eppel in the Porsche.
So at the checkered flag, sports sedans goes to Ryan Humphrey over the sports car of Richard Bloomfield, and taking out first place, WA muscle cars, Troy Wilson.
Race 3 for the Formula Vs out on the racetrack, and the action was red hot at the pointy end of the 1600 field. Once again, the same 4 cars putting on some incredibly entertaining racing as they fought it out over the course of 8 laps.
Listen, Esterbauer, Casely, just 3 names that are synonymous with Formula V racing here in Western Australia, giving the crowd their money's worth for sure, with some wheel-to-wheel racing all day provided by these Formula Vs.
A lead change there as Franz Esterbauer challenged Rod Lisson for the race lead, as Chero challenging Casely further back in the race for third. They weren't exactly joined together as closely as we'd seen earlier on in the day, but still some fantastic racing at the pointy end. Take nothing away from the 1200 field as well. Brett Scarry putting on some great racing, leading the charge ahead of the Lockett boys. But the action was red hot as Lisson reclaimed the lead from Esterbauer up front.
We move back into the 1200cc category. It was all Brett Scarry, leading the way from young Andrew Lockett over his father, Miles Lockett.
They were even quick enough to be pushing up onto the back of the 1600 field, closing up onto the back of the 55 of Kenneth Wyatt. Throughout the course of the race, Dave Casely dragging up the car into third, dragging Danny Chero with him as well, putting on the true 4-car fight for the pointy end of the 1600 field that we love to watch at carco.com.au Raceway. Race results as the checkered flag dropped. Rod Lisson somehow too strong to claim the win, 3rd race in a row over Franz Esterbauer in 2nd and Danny Chero this time in 3rd.
For the 1200cc category, it was all Brett Scarry, 3 from 3 over Andrew Lockett and Miles Lockett. Rounding out an action-packed day of racing here at carco.com.au Raceway, it's FSR. It was all Elliott Chute down into turn number 1 with Cooper Cuts along the outside and Adam Lyle looking for an inside run behind Elliott Chute in car 8.
Great to see Cooper Cuts challenging at the pointy end of the field, proving some serious progression over the course of the race day. Jay Wong having a great run towards the pointy end of the field as well. as was young Joel Wheeler. In the third and final race for FSR, Cooper Cutts eventually falling back to second. Elliott Shute once again too strong for the rest of the field, circulating some 1/10 of a second, 2/10 of a second a lap quicker than Cooper Cutts back there in second, who's found serious pace throughout the course of the day.
Joe Burgich, one of the cars that spun earlier in the day, trying to make up some ground as they come down into turn number 1. Also, Brad Russell trying to make up some ground too.
Not too many lead changes in the final race for FSR, but Jay Wong having a great run, closing up to the back of Adam Lyle, heading into the second half of the race and challenging for the final podium spot in third. Great looking 19 machine of Campbell Nunn having a fantastic run deep in the field of great FSR entries.
So at the checkered flag, it was all car number 8, 3 from 3 for Elliott Shute over Cooper Cutts, and rounding out the podium, Jay Wong. Well, that's a wrap on an outstanding weekend of racing here for the carco.com.au Cup. Make sure you check us out on the WA Sporting Car Club socials.
We'll see you next time, April 15 and 16.